Archbold, a non-profit organization founded in 1941 dedicated to science, conservation, and education, is a world-class natural laboratory located on nearly 20,000 acres in the headwaters of the Everglades. Archbold's mission is to build and share the scientific knowledge needed to protect the life, lands, and waters of Florida and beyond. With 7 ecological research programs, Archbold science is deeply trusted and critical for conservation of species and natural systems in Florida. Our education program has welcomed thousands of K-12 students over more than 30 years through immersive field trips and summer camps, focusing on building a connection to nature and sense of place in Florida's heartland. Today, I left the urban jungle of Miami for the wild heart of Florida. Camping gear, check. Photography equipment, check. Mosquito repellent, check. First, I traveled along the Miami Ridge, hugging the Everglades to the west. This strip of higher ground was once home to panthers and pine forests. Both have been replaced with people, more than 8 million of us. Soon, my path veered northwest. For 50 miles, I cut across the historical headwaters of the River of Grass. This was once a vast, marshy wilderness. Today, sugarcane fields stretch to the horizon on either side. As the elevation climbed, I passed miles of cattle ranches and orange groves. I've gone from Miami rush hour to rural America, and now, my refuge. I'm not a wealthy man, but I've got Fisheating Creek, and life is rich indeed. Many of my earliest memories are of Fisheating Creek and our cabin. Now I'm creating new memories with my own family. Our connection to the wilderness began in the early 1970s when my Uncle Jim, the founder of the Florida Trail, discovered this 1 square mile tract. For a developer, it wasn't worth very much. For the wildlife it supported, the land was priceless.
In 1970, I was living in Miami, a budding wildlife photographer. I was looking for raw nature for my cameras, and I found it 2.5 hours north of Miami. The place was called Fisheating Creek. It might be my favorite spot in the world. Full of wildlife, full of otter, wading birds, alligators, a photographer's dream.
So my uncle put together a group of conservationists to buy and preserve this property. Soon, my parents began their own careers as wildlife filmmakers, and Fisheating Creek was a great place to start.
As part of the original group that my brother organized to buy land at Fisheating Creek, it just to us seemed like the ideal place from which Judy and I could launch out and make the documentary films that we had planned.
About 3 months into our marriage, Rich handed me a book called How to Build a Wood Frame Cabin. Pretty soon I had a saw in my hand, a hammer and nails, and within a few months we had a cabin.
That cabin was like a second home, and I gotta say, it was a wonderful way to grow up. 50 years later, 3 generations of Kerns have enjoyed and helped preserve our little slice of wild Florida. We packed the essentials and launched our canoe into the tea-colored waters of Fisheating Creek. Most Floridians can't point to this river on a map. A shame, because it's an important part of the Everglades watershed. Fisheating Creek is, in fact, the only free-flowing river feeding into Lake Okeechobee, the birthplace of the River of Grass. The creek's meanders slow the water's journey as it flows towards the lake, allowing all of the aquatic plants to perform their roles as nature's water filters. My buddy Nick Quintairos is a wildlife filmmaker like me. He mostly focuses, however, on the ocean. But as they say, all rivers wind their way to the sea, and there is an important link between the water quality of Fisheating Creek and that of Florida Bay. All right, so Nick, you're a marine biologist. I wonder if you can help make that connection for us between like the Fisheating Creek River, this freshwater river in the middle of our state, and a place like Florida Bay.
Yeah, so like you said, we're at Fisheating Creek, and so the water passes through Fisheating Creek and it makes its way to Lake Okeechobee, then through the Everglades, eventually into Florida Bay, and finally out onto the Florida Straits and the Florida Keys.
And of course, all of that water, starting Fisheating Creek, flowing through the Everglades and making its way to the Keys, it carries stuff with it, right?
Yeah, so mainly nitrogen and phosphorus are the two things we're monitoring because they cause algal blooms out in the marine ecosystem, and it can cause really massive die-offs of marine life, and it can be really detrimental to the ecosystem.
So excess nutrients are a problem, but it's a good thing that there is a natural solution right here in our backyard, right?
Yeah, so wetlands act as a natural filter to filter out these nutrients before they get to the ocean and cause problems in all sorts of different ecosystems. And so they provide what's called ecosystem services to us in South Florida by cleaning our water constantly, day and night, 24/7, 365 days a year.
Ecosystem services are the benefits that natural ecosystems provide for human well-being. When they're drained, wetlands can no longer perform their services as nature's water filters, and in Florida, we're suffering the consequences of this. Harmful algal blooms are becoming frequent because of elevated nutrients in our waters. Today, we're attempting to reverse the damage by recovering our wetlands. The Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan is the largest ecosystem restoration project in our planet's history. The plan includes the restoration of the Kissimmee River, which funnels water from the Orlando area into Lake Okeechobee. Unlike Fisheating Creek, the Kissimmee was heavily altered by humans. The river was straightened, its meanders removed, and its wetlands drained. This was great for agriculture and development, not for wildlife or water quality. Without the filtering services of its floodplain wetlands, the Kissimmee's waters became polluted, impacting Lake Okeechobee, the River of Grass, and surrounding coastal estuaries. During the winter months, the cypress swamps bordering Fisheating Creek dry up, becoming passageways for terrestrial animals. But with the summer comes the rain, transforming these habitats into magical, flooded forests. The water is dark but not polluted. Rather, it's stained like tea from the submerged leaves. It's full of life, if you look closely. For a minnow like the gambusia, it's also full of danger. Better steer clear of the giant water bugs, and the dragonfly nymphs, and the water tigers. So should the glass shrimp, for that matter. The apple snail grazes on aquatic plants. Here's a fun fact. It can breathe surface air thanks to a siphon tube extending from its rear end. These mollusks are an important food source for many animals. The limpkin is a picky eater, its diet consisting almost exclusively of apple snails. Escargot, it's what's for dinner. J.R.R. Tolkien famously wrote, "Not all that wander are lost. Today, I'm gonna wander." Our land is a mosaic of habitats, from cypress swamps to pine flatwoods and jungly hardwood hammocks. I like to soak up the sounds, bask in the scenery, and examine the minutiae. I find pattern, poetry, purpose in this wilderness. During the dry season, the resurrection ferns wither. But with the first rains of spring, they are seemingly reborn. The sensitive plant responds to the slightest touch. The tiny sundew is a glistening beauty. Its sweet droplets are too tempting for many insects to ignore. Caught in the sundew's sticky snare, some are unable to escape. Enzymes eventually dissolve the prey, allowing this carnivorous plant to absorb their nutrients. Look closely. Nature is full of surprises. Today, my buddy Josh and I are going hunting. But we're using a different kind of arsenal.
All right, Josh, so if you want to clean the lenses, I'll go ahead and take care of the cards and the batteries.
Locked, loaded, and ready for action.
Boom, that's it.
All right, awesome, let's hit the trail.
Let's do it.
I've identified several spots on our property where I want to deploy my traps. But to get there, we'll have to do some slogging.
All right, Josh, FYI, if you step on a log and it moves, it might not be a log.
Thanks for the advice.
These camera traps will allow us to remotely capture video of animals wandering through our property. Animals that are normally wary of humans. Our motion-activated traps deployed, we can hike back and let them do our work for us. Over the past 2 years, our network of cameras have revealed a wildlife corridor that is bustling with activity. I spot white-tailed deer and Osceola turkey regularly on my hikes, but they never stick around too long. The traps let us spy on their daily lives. It turns out turkey are big fans of wild coffee berries, for example. We see fascinating behavior and get a sense of the animal's movements and habits. There are heartwarming moments and heartbreaking scenes. Despite a serious injury, this deer managed to hang on for several months, though it is now extremely vulnerable. Bobcats are stealthy and hardly ever seen. Now we realize how abundant they really are. Note to self, careful where you step when you're hiking the bobcat trail. 500 years ago, conquistadors landed on Florida's shores. They came with baggage, including domesticated pigs, and many got loose. Within a couple of generations, the hog's hair became wiry. They grew sharp tusks. Even the shapes of their skulls changed. Feral pigs had officially taken root. One thing wild hogs love to do is root. At Fisheating Creek, roaming hordes have done a number on our trails, setting the stage for a bumpy ride or a twisted ankle. Whatever your opinion is of this place, I say, Fisheating Creek is for the birds. Our trail cameras have also captured a diversity of bird life that call this place home. How often do you see a barred owl waiting around in the swamp? Or a red-shouldered hawk for that matter? 20 feet up the trunk of a slash pine, we discovered a pileated woodpecker nest. Inside the cavity is a pair of 2-week-old chicks. These little redheads are hungry, and they're loud about it. Mom and Dad have their hands full. A large grub quiets them down for a little bit. But it's a full-time job keeping these hangry teenagers fed. Woodpeckers are important ecosystem engineers. I've always loved the Spanish word for these birds, carpinteros. Uniquely equipped to excavate cavities in tough wood, the holes will be used by a variety of other animals once their chicks fledge. Other birds, like the eastern screech owl, and small mammals like the gray squirrel, rely on the woodpecker's skills to raise their own young. In the spring, swallow-tailed kites nest in tall trees along Fisheating Creek. Once the young hatch, the parents take turns swooping over the tree line hunting for prey. Tree frogs are one of their main targets, but kites aren't that picky. Nestling bird, nice and juicy. We were tipped off to a nest at the Royal Poinciana Golf Club in Naples. Done right, urban green spaces like this can become valuable habitat for animals, especially if native landscaping is used. This is a great opportunity for us. The problem is, the nest is very high. The only way to get the eye-level shots we want is by erecting a tower blind. I gotta say, assembling the blind 50 feet in the air is nerve-wracking, especially when you're being dive-bombed by several protective kites. This nest has produced a single chick. At 14 days old, the parents leave it unattended while they hunt. With the temperature in the 90s, the youngster thermoregulates by panting and catching a breeze. I, on the other hand, thermoregulate by sweating buckets. Careful on that edge, little guy. It's a long way down. I want to make sure my camera is ready to roll when the parents are approaching the nest. So I've got Mom on the ground to give me a heads up.
Okay, Richard, coming in.
Okay, got it.
First on the menu is another plump nestling, and breakfast is a team effort. The second course is a bit of a surprise, but it shouldn't be. An invasive green iguana. Like many places in South Florida, iguanas are all over this golf course. The kites are doing their best to manage the invasion. At 4 weeks old, kite chicks began exercising their wings. By late summer, they fledged, and the birds congregate in staging grounds, where hundreds gather to prepare for their 5,000-mile migration south. Florida is an important corridor for migratory birds. They follow the peninsula to hunt and rest for as long as possible before taking the leap to cross the ocean. By late September, swallowtail kites will have made it to their winter homes as far south as Brazil. I often wish I could go back in time to a Florida well before highways and strip malls and housing developments. One of our most ancient habitats can be found close to my cabin. Archbold Biological Station is home to some of the last unspoiled Florida scrubland in the state. The Lake Wales Ridge is a dividing line between the Kissimmee River watershed to the east and the Fisheating Creek watershed to the west. 200,000 years ago, when ocean levels were much higher, this elevated land was actually a chain of islands. So the Florida scrub habitat is characterized by this very powdery sand. This is actually ancient coastal dune sand, and the substrate really determines what kinds of plants can grow here. You'll notice that there's no tall canopy, it's mostly small shrubs, and the sand itself provides really good drainage, which means that this habitat is usually very hot and usually very dry, almost desert-like. There are actually a couple dozen species of plants and animals that can only be found in the Florida scrub habitat. Included in that list is the Florida scrub jay, Florida's state bird. No, actually, that's a lie. Our state bird is the mockingbird, which is also the state bird for Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Not very original. The Florida scrub jay is, however, a true native, one of Florida's only endemic birds. Jays are super intelligent and live in complex family units within clearly defined territories.
So this map represents our study tract at Archbold, and each sticker represents a scrub jay family, and each family unit consists of a breeding pair and either 0 to 5 helpers. So on average, a family group has 3 helpers. And that's an interesting system because it's a cooperative breeding system, which is unusual in the bird community.
Only a subset of cooperative breeders do have helpers that help.
which means that the number of helpers that a group has actually has a positive impact on the number of nestlings the pair produces.
Juveniles stay with their parents for several years after fledging. They're not just mooching, however. They're put right to work, helping to feed and train their younger siblings, and keeping watch for predators. Newly fledged jays exhibit begging behavior to entice mom, dad, brother, or sister to give them a snack. Researchers at Archbold Biological Station have been studying the Florida scrub jay for over 5 decades, giving this species the distinction of being one of the longest studied birds in the world. They can be curious and comfortable around humans, making behavioral observations easy.
Scrub jays are just great learners. If they do a behavior and they get positively rewarded, they'll do it again. And just like you train a dog, you can train a scrub jay, or actually probably faster than a dog because they're probably smarter than dogs. Cats are also good learners, so they will know a place where birds will often come and be busy feeding. Often birds are fed in people's backyards or at feeders, and they often fall prey to cats. As many as 1 billion with a B birds are killed by feral or outdoor cats every year.
That's right. Our beloved domesticated cat is a prolific bird predator. But the main threat to the scrub jay is habitat loss. High, dry land is valuable real estate, and today, most of our historic scrublands have been developed. Much has also been lost to succession. Succession is the process of change from one type of habitat to another. For the scrub, there is one factor that can prevent this from happening: fire. Plants native to this habitat have adapted to fire. Without regular burns, other less fire-adapted plants will take over. Until recently, humans have assumed that all wildfires are bad, leading to a long history of fire suppression. Today, ecologists at Archbold perform prescribed burns to keep the scrub healthy. I know what you're thinking. How do animals survive a wildfire? Well, most can simply outrun the blaze. But what about those that are a little more speed challenged, like the gopher tortoise? Worry not, thanks to the gopher tortoise. These reptiles won't win the 100-yard dash, even in turbo mode. They're shy and can sense vibrations from far away, giving them time to hide. At our property, I rarely ever see them, but I find their signs all over the place.
Here's some gopher tortoise poop, scat, if you want to be technical about it. It's really not that offensive because these animals are herbivores, so it's pretty much all grass and organic matter.
A year ago, we conducted a prescribed burn on our pine flatwoods. Like the scrub, this habitat needs fire to prevent succession. Days after the burn, we discovered a dozen burrows which had been hidden in the dense palmettos. These holes were made by gopher tortoises. By the way, this is what the forest looked like just after the burn. And this is what it looked like less than a year later. Out of curiosity, I set up trail cameras on a few of the burrows. Like woodpeckers, gopher tortoises are important ecosystem engineers. They excavate massive burrows deep enough to survive a wildfire. In addition to the tortoises, they shelter as many as 350 other species of animals, like armadillos and the endemic Florida mouse. The burrows and the habitat the tortoises create are so important to the survival of so many other critters, and I want to know more. If only I could get a glimpse into their subterranean world.
So what I have here is basically a $300 inspection camera, and it has a 10-foot fiber optic cable, a tiny little camera. It's the perfect tool for getting a glimpse into a tight spot like a gopher tortoise burrow.
The burrows attract a lot of insects. Also, amphibians, which eat a lot of those insects. A few species of snakes are also gopher tortoise commensals, They're decent roommates, even though they don't pay rent. The eastern coachwhip, one of the fastest snakes in North America, is a common tenant, and the burrow is a great place to find a date. Some animals seem to visit out of curiosity. Others come for the food. Bobcats have gotten the memo. Maybe there's a Florida mouse down there somewhere. This one managed to nab a rabbit at the entrance of a flooded burrow. Looks like it's take your kitten to work day. The sandy apron at the entrance to the burrow is where the tortoises lay their eggs. Armadillos and raccoons are notorious nest raiders and love eggs of all kinds. The grim truth is that hatching success rates are super low for these reptiles. But hey, they gotta keep trying. Head bobbing is used to entice a female, or to pick a fight. When they're not attempting to procreate, males often engage in ultra-violent jousting matches. It's like watching a cage match at half speed. Summer rains can be torrential. So what do these terrestrial tortoises do when they find their homes are underwater? We were surprised to see them dunk right in, probably to cool down from the Florida heat. How long can the tortoise hold its breath? We don't know exactly, but apparently a long time. Though more comfortable on dry land, it turns out the Gopher tortoise doesn't mind taking a dip and is a halfway decent swimmer.
All right, we're coming up on Gopher tortoise burrow number 1. Oh no. Shoot. Can you see right here? I think we got some predation. That is too bad. Those are Gopher tortoise eggs. Their hatching success rate is so low, and that's because of predators like raccoons and armadillos. So that's too bad. But we'll have to take a look at the game camera to see what the culprit was.
What we discovered was completely unexpected. A large aquatic Florida softshell turtle had decided to lay her eggs in the sand at the entrance to the burrow. 3 hours later, a raccoon found the egg chamber. It was a massacre for the softshell, but this turtle is much more common than the Gopher tortoise and will lay many more eggs during its lifespan. Nature can be harsh, but left alone, it does find balance. Our trails are getting rough, so today I'll be firing up the tractor to do a little maintenance. Feral hogs have rooted up our pathways. Our hope is that if we grade them with densely packed fill, the pigs might focus their efforts elsewhere. We had several loads delivered from a nearby quarry, 30 miles from the ocean. I was surprised to find that the piles were absolutely full of seashells.
So it's really cool to think that a lot of these species of marine mollusks are still alive today, and yet this deposit was probably formed over 500,000 years before human civilization.
The Earth has been gradually warming and cooling in cycles throughout the ages. But the sobering fact is that today, climate change is happening much more rapidly than is natural. This is because of the human variable. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've been cutting down forests and burning massive amounts of coal and oil, heating up our planet by adding greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. As Florida's climate warms, a host of tropical invasive species from different parts of the world are given the chance to establish a foothold. Our property is being invaded by tropical soda apple, strawberry guava, and old world climbing fern to name a few. Water hyacinth can blanket the surface of the river itself. With about 400 acres of land in total, it's tough for us to manage all of these invading plants. And then, there are the pigs. Feral hogs have become a huge problem. Highly intelligent and tough, with acute senses of sight, smell, and hearing, they're also extremely prolific. Sows can have as many as 24 piglets in a year. Within 8 months of birth, a young sow is ready to reproduce. Pigs are omnivorous, bulldozing the earth for roots, tubers, invertebrates, and even snakes. They cause a tremendous amount of damage to agriculture and natural ecosystems, making them one of the worst invasive species in the world. But there's one native that could take advantage of this invasion. It's time to check our camera traps, which always feels like Christmas. Clicking through the latest batch of footage shows a familiar cast of characters. Deer, turkey, bobcats, and hogs. Lots of hogs. But then...
Yes, Dad. He's back.
That's right. A healthy Florida panther. And the timestamp tells us that he stalked by less than 4 hours ago. We captured our first image of this burly male in 2021. Since then, he's prowled through our property about once every 2 months. This land has become his pathway, and probably an important hunting ground. There are less than 250 of these apex predators in existence. In the 1980s, however, there were as few as 20 remaining, most with severe genetic problems. Today, the Florida panther is a conservation success story, even though it is still critically endangered. Our property is well north of their primary range, but the footage we've captured is an indication that this big cat is on the rebound. He's just looking for more real estate. And our land is ideal for a panther, with 400 acres of unspoiled habitat, plenty of tree cover, and lots of game, especially pigs. If you look at a satellite image of the Fisheating Creek River, you can see how much undeveloped habitat there is all along its course. This really is a perfect corridor for the panther to roam. During the summer rainy season, much of our property is transformed into swampland, similar to what you'd find in the western Everglades, the panther's primary range.
So this is it. This is the spot. The water's really high right now. Usually it's kind of a swampy mess and pigs like to wallow here. But we just so happen to have our cameras set up at the right place at the right time.
What our camera captured here blew our minds. For a cat that has been forced to adapt to swamp life, this is not behavior we'd expect. But we're not the experts. So I decided to show this footage to Joe Guthrie, predator-prey biologist at Archbold Biological Station.
All right, let's see this card.
All right, I'm anxious to hear what you say about this.
Whoa. That is an amazing looking animal.
You know, I'm not a panther expert. I was so curious to hear your thoughts. I think of the Florida panther as a swamp cat, but obviously, you know, he's not comfortable with the water.
Swamp cat is a little bit of a misnomer. The swamps are kind of the last best remnant of forest, and this cat clearly prefers upland habitats. It's where more of their prey is. It's better for their denning. The relationship between swamps and panthers is a little bit of a forced marriage. We've developed all of the good upland habitat in South Florida, and so they're forced into these kind of remnants and strands of forest. And you know, that's a challenge for conservation. We've got to figure out how to do more conservation for uplands in Florida and somehow try to keep pace with the development of those places.
How lucky we are to live here, where the rest of America goes on vacation. The Sunshine State, home to crystal clear springs, coral reefs, America's Everglades. For most of us, our roots run no deeper than a few generations, but we're firmly planted. Almost 1,000 of us move to Florida each day, all clamoring for space, for clean water, a patch of sand to take in our world-famous sunsets. How can we make room for both people and panthers? Tough question, but we need to ask it, and we need to look for sustainable solutions. Panthers need room to roam. A single male requires a territorial range of about 200 square miles. But human development has backed this big cat into a corner. The panther's traditional home once ranged as far as Arkansas. Today, it has shrunk to a remnant of swampland in South Florida. As their numbers slowly rise, wildlife corridors are disappearing. They have busy highways to cross. Hunting grounds, once rich with prey, are being turned into strip malls and subdivisions. Conservationists estimate that we have less than 30 years to reconnect and preserve our remaining wilderness areas. This shrinking web of land is referred to as the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Panthers desperately need this to happen, and so do gopher tortoises, and scrub jays, and turkey, and deer, and the clock is ticking. We don't really have a plan today. Maybe I'll watch the sunrise through the morning fog. Scout can take her dog on a walk through the neighbor's cow pasture, or swing in the hammock. We'll go exploring. She definitely won't comb her hair. With a family of my own now, I think of all of the memories made here. I've found purpose and clarity in this natural corridor, and before we make the trip back to Miami, our only real plan is to make new memories in our little slice of subtropical paradise along the banks of Fisheating Creek, Wild River of the Everglades.